there. You never know what's in there. Lovely to see you. And
Thank you. Nice to be here. Thank you.
Sort of thing. First of all, so we can have a chat. Just let me know, how did you become a costume designer? Were you arty? Were you?
I wanted to do it since I was 11. I made a decision when I was 11. Yeah, I used to watch all the BBC things like Elizabeth R and the Six Wives of Henry VIII, all those things, and I just really liked them, and I got obsessed by them, and I thought, oh, should I be an actress? Oh no, I'll be a fashion designer. I thought, I know, I'll actually costume design. And at the time, it wasn't really a job that most people knew much about. And that was always what I wanted to do, and at school I did stuff. I used to work at my school holidays at the costume houses, and I went to art school and specialised at Wimbledon in costume design.
Right.
But that was always like the plan. You know, and even when careers teachers would say, oh, you know, what do you want to do? And I'd say, oh, I'm going to be a costume designer. And I'd go, what? You know, we don't know. And I'd bring out all the leaflets and stuff. And there were only 3 courses in the country that did costume then. Now there's loads, but yeah. So yes.
Here you are.
Yes, it was my mission in life. And then even when I thought this is a stupid job, it's like, well, I can't go back now. You know, it's like, oh, well, it's too late.
So how did you get onto Doctor Who? I mean, was it something that you thought, well, I've got no interest in doing science fiction, or was it, yes, that's what sort of...
No, it was pure fluke. No, it wasn't. I mean, I've done lots of different stuff, like Young Indiana Jones Chronicles and all sorts of things. And, you know, I mean, when I was a kid, I watched Doctor Who. I mean, I watched it when John Pertwee was Doctor Who, and I used to really enjoy it and loved the costume side of it.
So
and
you still
everything else. So, well, I just thought, oh, you know, I really enjoyed it, but I never thought any more of it than that. And it was pure fluke. I was meant to be doing one film and things didn't work out, and my agent rang and said, oh, listen, they're looking for a costume designer for series 2 of Doctor Who, you know, and they've asked to meet you. And I'm like, oh, I live in London. Doctor Who, as you know, filmed in Cardiff, and it's like Cardiff for 10 months seems like a bit of a scary prospect. But I went and met Phil Collinson, and it sort of went from there. I was asked to... Oh,
that wasn't me.
It's a bit scary. I was asked, like literally the day before I had my meeting, my agent rang me and said, oh, they've just said, can you come up with looks for the new Doctor? And I was like, oh my God, what sort of thing? And I was like, oh, I don't know what to do. And I spent the whole night just sort of cutting pictures out and doing sort of a lookbook and touchy-feely fabrics and stuff, and sort of words of things that I thought he should be. I knew they'd just announced that David was going to do it. I knew David was going to do it. It'd been in the papers that he was going to do it. And I'd sort of put words like, you know, funky and sexy, and, you know, girls will fancy him, boys will want to be him, and all that sort of thing. And I had it, and I put it in like, I thought, well, I don't want to go a bit too grand with, so, you know, people, I mean, I had no idea what people would go with, because you take your normal portfolio with you, but then I thought, I don't want to go with some great big thing, you know, and so I put it all in like an A4 little flip book, because I thought, oh, well, it's subtle enough not to be too flashy. And then when I got to my meeting, Phil was on his own, and Russell T Davies was supposed to be there, and Julie Gardner, the other producer. And I didn't know Phil was actually, it was the first time he'd ever interviewed anyone on his own, because he thought they were coming. And I turned up first, and then he said, oh, you know, have you brought anything with you, and have you brought anything about the new Doctor? And I said, oh, I've done a school project for you. And you know, he flicked through this thing, and he went, oh, can I keep it? And I said, no, you can't actually. I think you'll find that's a bit cheeky, because obviously then he could keep it. I'm only an interview, and then you go, thanks, you know, give it to someone else. And I said, and he was so lovely, and we got on so well. And I said, listen, I've only done it for this interview, take it. And he said, oh, I'll send it back to your agent, I promise. And then I was cool, and then I was like, oh gosh, Cardiff, you know, this is a bit of a weird one. And then I got another phone call saying, well, they want to see you again. And I'm like, oh, this is really... And so I went, okay, and I went back and I met Julie as well, and I was offered it, and that was it, and started the following week. It was that fast.
So with your kind of initial ideas for David's costume, how far away were they, kind of very close to what they turned out in the end?
One of them was, yeah, one of them was. I mean, I knew David had ideas about wanting long coats, and he always said that. And I went to meet him. He was on another film, and I went down to meet him, and I took the school project with, and we talked about fabrics, and I had like I had like 4 different looks. I had one that was kind of more sort of funky catwalky military things with more pockets and bits and stuff,
Yeah.
and I had some others. I had the suit one and I had something else, and I said to David, look, maybe we should just go out shopping and try some shapes on, because he was so short on time. And then I thought, well, what we'd do is I'd get a load of shapes together at Angel's Costume House as well, once I'd done the shopping, and we got to chat a bit and stuff, and and literally I think we talked. We went out to Selfridges like at 9 o'clock one morning for like an hour just to try on some shapes so that I knew what I'd be able to pull. And kind of in that conversation we'd sort of both said, oh, it'd be nice if it was a sort of suit, it'd be quite cool. And and then I'd done a lot of samples with grey things for coats, like steely greys and stuff like that. And he said, oh, actually browns really suit me. So all my sampling for the coat was all browns, and all the suit fabrics were brown rounds as well. And I had a big rail of stuff, so the next time I saw him I had like 3 rails of all sorts of shapes with different periods and different stuff, just to try and do stuff. And I had a whole pile of samples on the floor, and I think we chose the coat fabric in about 5 minutes. And the coat shape was a mixture of a couple of different period things that we tried, and and that got pared down a lot. I mean, when we originally started making it, I think I did a couple of fittings which Russell saw photos for, and it was much more tailored in and flared out more. It was much more
a bit like Fabian's coat.
Probably a bit more like that. And Russell kept saying, oh, I think the lapels are too big, make them smaller, and make the coat narrower. And it kept going narrower, narrower, narrower. And I said, God, he's going to a pencil by the end of it. And Russell said, oh, I love the idea of pencil. So that's great. And I was like, okay. And that and the suit, the suit was a bit of a weird one, because the fabrics I'd sampled we weren't mad about. And then I bought a pair of trousers, which now is kind of common knowledge. I bought a pair of trousers to try them for shape, and they had this stripe through them, and I'd only bought them for shape, but they were really, the fabric was really great. And David was like, oh, well, why can't we make the suit in this fabric? And I went, because I don't have the fabric. And he went, oh, it was best. It was the best out of all the things that we had. And we ended up cutting, I bought loads and loads and loads of these trousers, which happened to be in the sale, and cut all of them up. And we cut, because David was so skinny, it was fine, because we panelled the suit jacket in such a way that we cut up and opened up all these trousers and then recut the whole thing to make into suits, which, the tailor wasn't very happy with me. And I did it as an experiment. I thought, because he kept saying, oh, but that fabric's the best, I went, I know, but, this is a bit of a problem. And also, it's thin cotton. I mean, actually, I have got a bit here that I'll show you, that I'll wave around, because we backed it. I mean, I've got the rest of it here, but it is so thin. Handbag somewhere. But it is, it is so thin, and so you have to back it on stuff. You can't just use it like this. But we messed around for a lot of time, doing things with it, and the coat was like that, which was this is the stuff that we went, it's like a wee beastie. Well, David said it was like a wee beastie, and it's quite springy, it kind of worked really well. And that has been through so much rain, so much snow, and, you wouldn't believe, it's just the wear of these things, I mean, we made about 4 brown suits, and we had 4 coats, and then we started with the blue the following year, but, they really wear big time. I mean, I think in the end we had about 12 pairs of trousers on the go as well, because with the stunts and stuff, and he'd slide across the floor on his knees and things like that, and they, of course, they wear. But so that was how it sort of happened, and how I ended up in Cardiff for 4 years, going up and down the M4. Exactly.
So coming to the companions, what was the first companion? Billy, you dressed. Yeah. Was that with a collaboration with you and her, or were you kind of told this is what she liked?
She was away. She'd obviously done series 1. She'd gone away and wasn't coming back to about 5 days before we started filming. I spoke to her on the phone, and we both agreed that it would be nice to take Rose on. I'd seen the whole of the series 1. I had seen. I saw it weirdly. I had watched it even before I knew I was going for an interview. I'd watched it because I was quite interested to see what had happened and how they'd done it. And Billy and I both felt that it's time that Rose moved on, and that she was much more sophisticated, and that she'd travelled with the Doctor, and therefore she should be more grown up. And we wanted to move away from that whole punky fishy hoodie thing. So I bought a load of stuff, and Billy and I literally, we met and drove up to town and whipped in and out of about 3 shops in half a day and bought a load of stuff, of which actually I think most of it we did use. And then she never came shopping again. Everything else I bought after that, and I'd buy stuff and bring it back and go, oh, I found this really great jacket, you know, and it sort of worked from there. But she did definitely get more sophisticated, and it was more...
You got the leather jacket.
Well, also, I think, you know, she, in Series 1, she wore trainers, and she never wanted to wear trainers again. She wore boots, and not only did she wear boots, but we put lifts in them, because she was concerned that David was so tall that she wanted a bit more height. And Billy's not short, anyway, but, I mean, I think we gave her 3 inches in height. She had so many of these things. It was like, I don't know how she walked in her boots, but she could, I'll be a bit taller. But yeah, so it was more about being sleeker, and, you know, and like with New Earth, or one of those where it was sort of meant to be sexier because of Cassandra and stuff, and, you know, and I played a few games and little tricks, like, I don't know, people saw the Queen Victoria episode with the dungaree dress and things. There was a little T-shirt with a crest, like the royal crest hanging out top, and, you know, stuff like, but mostly fluke, I have to say. It was not as contrived as people might think. It's much, you know, you don't have the time. It's so fast. It's like bish bash bosh. You can't, you know, you don't have time to sit and debate about it for days, really.
And then you also dressed Elizabeth Sladen for school union.
Yeah, for school union, yeah.
Did you go, but had you, obviously, Liz was very famous for some of her outfits, which she wore. That kind of tweed suit and everything, that look.
It's about her being a journalist. Russell said, oh, she's in disguise, and she should be in maybe a suit because she's a journalist, and that's it. And Liz and I went shopping. She was so tiny, bless her, Liz, you know, she was so tiny that actually finding things that fitted her was quite a mission. You know, she would say, I can't find anything that fits, you know, jeans as well. I mean, we must have spent about half a day looking for a pair of jeans that, you know, were small enough for her. But yeah, that was really, I mean, that was sort of just, we just left to get on with it, really. I mean, with most of the visiting characters, some people cast maybe 2 days before they work, you know, and I'm the first person they meet. So often, you know, casting is so late, you're filming another episode or you're filming something else, and you get a phone call saying, oh, blah, 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 we've got so-and-so, and I'll ring them up. And they haven't read the script a lot of the times either. You know, if they've been to see the casting people, they're not allowed to read the script. They've done, you know, a couple of lines, so they don't even know who they're playing, really. They've been told roughly, but because I've had meetings with Russell and with the director, and we've talked about the overall look of the piece and what we're trying to achieve, most actors were actually very gracious in the fact that they kind of appreciated the fact that I would just give them their character and say, look, this is what we discussed, this is how the character's going to be, this is, you know, there's stuff here I can't explain now to you about the story, and I can't go into all the backstory of it or what's going to happen in the future, but basically this is the reason why, you know, it would be best if we did this. I mean, I did have the odd you know, actor that come along and say, oh, can I have a cape? And I'm like, it's like, no. It's like, why? But I mean, mainly, you know, that people, you know, I'd say, well, actually, you know, Russell specifically has said that he wants you in a skirt, or that, you know, we're doing this, or our colour scheme for this episode is this, and, you know, and therefore we have to stay. I mean, obviously, sometimes Russell might have said, oh, you know, this character should look like this, blah, 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 blah. And then when they cast the person, you go, no, this is not how this is going to work. You know, and I just sent an email to Russell and say, sorry, but I don't think this person's actually the same person we described. I think things have changed. And he went, oh, darling, whatever, I'm sure they'll be gorgeous. It'll be marvellous, that's fine. And I normally, you know, always when I went shopping with people, if it wasn't made and it was shopping, then I'd take photos and I'd email them straight through to Julie, to Russell, to the director, to Phil. And normally within an hour you'd get feedback from all of them, and they'd all kind of, you know, make their comments. And I used to have a little trick, because I knew that if I sent them to Russell late at night first, then he'd reply first, and then actually it didn't matter. Well, yes, because Russell overrode anybody else's decision. So, you know, and of course, if he'd kind of emailed back, went, oh, darling, it's gorgeous, that's it, that's the end of the story, really. That's really, you know, the way it worked. And, you know, I mean, I never had a problem anyway, really, but it was quite funny, because he was only wide awake at 2 in the morning when he was sending the email, and so he'd reply, and, you know.
With the monsters, where does, obviously, the collaboration between you and the designer.
Millennium.
How much input do you have? Or do they say, right, this is the monster, this is what the head looks like, design the body for? What's your
yeah. I mean, obviously with most of the monsters, the only monsters I didn't do, obviously the Cybermen and the Centauran. And I was just really doing Cybermen actually, and it was boys' toys, and they spent months and months and months. Neil Gaunt spent a long time redesigning that, and they had a lot more time. You know, you have to remember, I'm filming one episode, I've got a script for another episode, I'm shopping in London, they're filming in Cardiff, I'm trying to do two things at once. Millennium are in their workshop, sitting there doing lovely visuals and emailing them through, and they have a lot more leisure time to send, you know, research. I mean, they talked about certain monsters with Russell probably a year in advance, you know, that I didn't even know about. And, you know, I'd suddenly read a script and there's a monster. And then we'd get to the tone meeting where we'd talk about the monster, and Neil would have already done probably an initial visual of the head. And it was normally, the rule was they did the head and I did the rest.
Right.
If they were doing hands, that's fine. If they weren't doing hands, I had to do gloves.
Right.
Obviously.
So say something like the Jadoon.
Yeah, that was an exception.
Everything from down was yours, or was it just
it should have been.
Or?
Originally, that's how it would have been. Originally, the Jadoon would have been them, and I would have done the rest. And in fact, the Jadoon was the exception because when I spoke to Neil and he started talking about the scale of the Jadoon head, which anyone that's seen a Jadoon in reality knows, it's enormous. And, you know, Millennium have access to facilities where they can fabricate. And Russell was talking about the Jadoons being gladiators and all of that stuff, and that wasn't a problem. But if I told you that the waist of those skirts, the Jadoon that I had made, were 40-inch waist skirts. So, you know, if the average boy was 28, 30 waist, you're talking about adding 10 inches more on that skirt, which meant proportionally the whole torso was at least 10 inches. And it's like, well, the whole torso part was a problem, because I'm like, well, what are we going to do on the top half? And then Neil said, you know what, actually it's going to be much easier for us to fabricate this and build it in with the head and with the body and do something that is proportion, and then you do the bottom half. And you know, I was quite happy to do that, really, actually, because I could never in the time have done what they did with the torso. Right. But that was an exception. I mean, normally, like with, say, the Hath or with the Ood or any of those things, sometimes they would do a cast of the head and they would send me it, so I knew roughly. But I mean, otherwise I'd just make a phone call and say, how many inches extra is it round the neck? Yeah. And you know, you knew that you needed something that was going to have to either undo at the front or the back to get the head on and be able to get the costume on top. Yeah. And often the time was so late that I didn't see the heads to the day. You know, I mean, you know, you tried to see them the day before, but I mean, quite often, literally the first time I saw the Hath head was on the morning that we shot on them, and the boys put them on. And I was like, whoa, you know, and it was fine because we knew that we'd done something which zipped up, and you know, you just learn by experience, really. Yeah. I know that in series 1, when they first did the shot dummy thing, they had real problems with that, because I know they had to put pinholes in the eyes and, you know, realise they couldn't shoot them from behind because the heads sort of, you know, didn't do all that stuff. Yeah. But with us, it was much, you know, they'd practiced, they knew, and I got to know. I mean, my first experience of a head where I was doing the rest was with my first monster, which was the Sycorax. And again, that, you know, it's like baptism by fire, because you suddenly go, whoa, I didn't realise that, you know, the Sycorax head didn't come down to the neck, and they didn't tell me, so it stopped here, and at the back it stopped there, so there's this gap. So it's like, well, we've got to make some sort of collar that's going to cover this, because they weren't doing anything that did that. So, but I had a good working relationship with Millennium, and, you know, you just have to keep talking and making sure that, you know, you've got the information.
Yeah. Which is the one that you're most proud of, that you think, yes, that really works and it looked fantastic? And
I think that the Jadoon I'm most proud of, because it was the best collaboration between the two of us, and they look the most impressive. I mean, the Sycorax I'm quite proud of as well, because it was my first monster, and I remember freaking out about that, because I hadn't even met Russell when I did that monster. I was trying to do David's outfit and the Sycorax, and and they'd been described as these scavengers, and James Hawes, the director, wanted them to be really rough and ready, and he was talking about Maasai warriors and red, all this stuff. Yeah. And then I'd kind of done all these sort of mock-ups, and I sent pictures to Russell, and Russell went, "Oh, I know I said they were scavengers, but darling, I think they're sophisticated scavengers." I was like, "Oh, so now it's more like regal velvet." And he went, "Yes, I think it is," and it's like, "Oh, okay, well, we'll try and do this." But that was a real cobbled together monster, really, because it was a bit of this and a bit of that, it was such a big mixture. Yeah. I mean, I know the scarecrows, weirdly, which were my most hellish monster for me, personally, just at the time of that whole episode, there was lots of stuff going on, but it's one of the most frightening for the kids. I know that I've seen that when we've done displays of it, and actually the scarecrows really freak out the kids. But, I mean, the Clockwork people was a similar thing, and again that was Neil's mask, and that was another thing where with Millennium, we had real problems because they turned up with the contraption on the day almost, with the knives coming out of the arms and stuff, and we can't get these up the sleeves, and we literally cut everything up and had to put bits in, and you're suddenly going, well, how's this going to work? And then they pull up other bits of gadgets like pumps and all sorts of things, and go, where's that going? And there's all sorts of invisible things you don't see, like battery packs. The Oods have a battery pack. It's got to be somewhere. It's in the back of their costume. It all has to be held somewhere, and some of them are quite heavy. They turn up with these batteries this big. And you go, where's that going? They expect them to be worn, and so, and sometimes they're not all proud. There are actors involved too who maybe don't want to have this. I mean, we did, with the Silence in the Library spacesuits. Again, that was a weird one because we did the suits and we'd asked them to do collars, and they were doing the helmets. And then when they arrived, the collars were so heavy, and they were solid. They were just solid pieces of plastic, and they didn't sit on top of their shoulders. And we sort of went, this doesn't work. It doesn't work because actually, if you're meant to be in space, then obviously there's a gap. Yes. And so, it was a major panic. We had people up all night trying to do them to make it sit on the shoulders properly, and then again their battery packs were sort of enormous. You must do something about it. So, but it's trial and error,
Sure it is.
Yes, it's sort of winging it. I mean,
Does anybody got any questions to ask Ian?
Yes, I was going to ask you something. Way back at Doctor Who started, the idea of futuristic costumes that really look completely different to what you would imagine now. Yeah. Sometimes we look at them and you think, oh, that looks a bit odd and a bit silly and a bit sort of thing. Now, with the Russell T Davies period, a lot of the costumes were actually fairly like what we've got today. Like you said, David's suit as opposed to the early Doctors. Plus, some of the aliens, you mentioned the Judoon, and I remember reading a story that Russell had said to somebody, it was a rhinoceros, it wasn't like a rhinoceros. Yeah. Whereas some of the early Doctor Who monsters, like the Ice Warriors, are reptilian, but there's something else. Yeah. Was it a policy decision
certainly,
to do very like the cat people were cats? And
certainly anything that was set in the future, if it involved crowd, then Russell would say, well, jeans have been around for hundreds of years, they go back to cowboy days, and therefore in 200 years' time, people will still be wearing jeans, and therefore, if we had crowd in a contemporary situation that might have gone into the future, if it was 2030, 2050, or whatever it was, he would say, actually, it hasn't changed that much, and that Russell hated the idea of anything that looked sort of spacey or futuristic, and the idea of anything shiny and silver repulsed him. So it was like, he would never want anything that looked remotely, futuristic or sort of science fiction in that way. It should all look quite real, and that, time's moved on by a few years, but actually, we were quite careful not to do anything that started to make it look sort of space agey or anything, even in this episodes when we were shot in space, like all our people on our spaceships, they were all very much workers. It was all more about their workers and therefore in their combat trousers or their boiler suits or whatever, but it was very much keeping it timeless, really. And also, from my point of view, I would say that, you know, I hope that if I watch the same episodes in 10 or 15 years' time, that I won't look at them and think that they're that dated in terms of the stuff that I've done, and even in the contemporary stuff. I would say you wouldn't go, oh my God, it looks like it's 2009 or something. I hope that people will be able to watch it because it's all quite, you know, it's sort of, caricature is not the wrong word, but it sort of has a look about it. So yeah, it was, but Russell didn't want it to look space, you know, space, futuristic-y, spacey in that way, really.
What about the animals?
I don't really know. That would be a Neil Gorton question, really, about the faces and stuff. I don't really know the answer to that. But again, yeah, I mean, with the cats, I mean, you know, yeah, the cat women they were cats, you know, that's what they were. I don't know. That's a Neil Gorton one.
Thanks, Avery.
Gary.
When you're watching productions, either sort of film, TV, or whatever, can you watch them as a regular viewer, or is your designer eye still working?
No, I can watch them as a regular viewer, except if I see something hideous, then I go, oh my God, that's awful. If it looks beautiful, at the end of it, I could go, that looks really beautiful. But if I'm watching something, even if it's EastEnders, and I see some awful top, I'll go, oh, that's vile, you know. So, yes. But if it's beautiful, you'll go, oh, that looks really nice, I'm really jealous, you know. If you go and see The Duchess, you go, yeah, I wish I'd done that film, you know. I try not to, it's best not to. I can still watch Home and Away quite happily, you know, without constant.
Good.
How much fun was it throwing people off the scent with the David Morrissey costume?
Oh, sorry, throwing...
People off the scent
off the
with the
scent.
David Morrissey costume.
Gosh, that was again, it was so quick. I mean, you know, if I told you David Morrissey was cast and started working 5 days later, I think it was, or a week later, there was very little time between David actually being fitted. And when I met him for that costume, I designed it, I bought the fabric, I rang him and said, can you meet me in half an hour in the costume house? And he walked in and I said, okay, this is what your part is, this is the fabric, this is what we're doing, try some shapes on because I need to get 3 of these made now. And obviously there's a throwback to the old Doctors. It's kind of, but it was more, I mean, Russell had said it was more of a nod to sort of William Hartnell type stuff, that's what it was. And obviously, yeah, I mean, I hope people did think, you know, they probably were curious and did wonder whether he was the Doctor. And you know, I loved that costume though. I thought it worked really well, and I was more pleased for it because it was both him and Dervla's costumes on that episode took a week, and Dervla had never seen an episode of Doctor in her life, and again it was like, this is what we're doing, and this is the fabric, and you know, but yeah, I was pleased with that costume though. I thought it worked really well, and that is actually probably one of the reasons why when someone said, oh, why wouldn't you stay and do Matt Smith's Doctor? And I'm like, actually, you know what, I feel like I've already done 2 Doctors because I feel like, you know, David was Doctor and actually David Morrissey in a way was a Doctor too, and it's like, actually, I don't need to do any more. I've done my bit. I've done it. Thanks.
Well, unfortunately, we've done our bit. They can talk for another hour, I think, but it's just flown by. Louise will be staying with us. She has got a marvellous portfolio with all the designs and samples of the fabrics. So if anybody wants to have a look at them and see what the real colours are, etc., etc., Louise will be about to. She's more than happy to show people what she's got, and so you can look at some proper real stuff.
Yes, or if they want to ask me any
ask any
questions.
Louise will be signing downstairs in a minute, but for the moment, massive big hand for Louise Page. Marvellous!